I recently picked up the CARTP certification from Pentester Academy. That is the Certified Azure Red Team Professional. Now, how good was it? You know, how much did I learn? How hands-on was it? And more importantly, perhaps for a lot of you guys, how good is it for getting jobs? Well, we're going to cover that and plenty more in this video, so definitely stay tuned. I'll put a link in the description to my actual cert just for proof and all of that stuff. If you want to verify that I got it, I have the link to the verification signifying that I have the certification and all of that. So full transparency there with you guys. But yeah, this is one that I kind of picked up on a whim, and the story behind me going for this cert is kind of interesting. So I was just browsing around through my emails and I saw one of theirs. You know, I'm right along with you guys, leveling up, buying stuff off of emails, right? Just like the rest of the world. So I saw this training on Azure red teaming and I was like, wow, that's really interesting. I definitely hear all the time just how big the cloud is and how high in demand it is. And that is not going anywhere anytime soon. That's not going to go away, right? I mean, in 2020, you know, with the state of the world as it was, right, a lot of changes came to security, to IT, to every industry, really. And one of those moves, yes, there was more work from home, but what that meant was there was a bigger shift towards the cloud, away from these on-prem setups a little bit, and more towards migrating things to the cloud. And a lot of times, developers and sysadmins, whatever, they think that they could simply take their infrastructure and directly port it to the cloud, right? That's a whole nother mess. That's a topic for another time, right? But the cloud is very complex. That is one of the challenges of it, not just for us as pen testers, but for the people actually configuring it, managing it, and stuff like that. So as you can imagine, there are a lot of security misconfigurations and common best practices that are not followed that could result in vulnerabilities, especially privilege escalation and stuff like that. And I found that this course was a very good way to introduce me to all these common vulnerabilities. And a lot of care and time was spent on behalf of Pentester Academy to set up this lab where I had access to a very realistic training environment. And this is also a skill set that I wanted to learn because there was no one on my current team that has a lot of knowledge in the cloud side, mostly on-prem and stuff like that. Of course, they have knowledge of. But yeah, this is a skill set that if you learn it, you're definitely going to be at the forefront even within this industry, because there's a lot of really solid hackers that have not gotten to start learning this side of pen testing yet. So it's very exciting to be on the front lines with everything. And if you're familiar with on-prem AD pen testing, right, tools like Bloodhound and stuff, well, there's Azure Hound for that. But to be honest, it just feels so undeveloped, right? So new, so beta, because it's not even fully built out in the sense that you can't just click on custom or pre-built queries, right? You have to write your own Cypher queries and things like that. So just little tidbits of that. You could definitely feel that this was something that is still very much in the discovery phase. I mean, we're always in the discovery phase with technology and hacking, right? Things are always new vulnerabilities are always being found constantly, even for older technologies. But definitely for this, you could tell it's like the Wild West. And if that sounds interesting to you, then this is definitely a good rabbit hole to go down to learn some cloud pen testing. And I think that there was absolutely top notch in terms of how they delivered the material. It was a lot of webinars for sure. So they're 4 hours long each. They do once a week webinars. This course went for 4 weeks. So yeah, I guess a total of 16 hours worth of webinars. And in the calls, they were demoing the different attacks. They'd first explain the different attacks before we even went into attacks, right? They took time to explain to us how Azure AD is set up. Now, I will make a specific distinction here. This course is focused on Azure AD. So obviously, Azure is massive. There's so much to it. You could never possibly cover it in a 4-week course. So they focused on what is probably the most important thing for us as pen testers. That's Azure Active Directory, Azure AD, and that includes bridging on-prem Active Directory to cloud, and they covered all the different ways you can do that, all the different configurations of joining your on-prem AD into the cloud. And that was what the focus was Azure Active Directory. Now, not Active Directory in the cloud. That is something separate. So I know it gets really confusing with Microsoft. So bear with me for a little bit here. But yeah, the Active Directory portion of Azure. So if you ever played around with it in the cloud, the AD section, that is what we mostly stuck to. Now, we did play around with things, some other Azure services outside of Azure Active Directory. So we played around with, for example, things like automation accounts and things like that, Azure Key Vault, all that stuff. So we really kind of restricted ourselves to the most common Azure services. There's more that you could dive in, but that's one thing that I really liked is the instructors, they showed us hey, here's the most commonly used services. We're going to teach you some stuff on that. And here is the most common vulnerabilities. But by the way, if you want to go down this rabbit hole further, I recommend looking into X, Y, and Z. So they really left us with a good foundation of how to get started pen testing this stuff and what to look for, but then also gave us that opportunity to do our own research after the course, say, okay, I want to look more into this or more into that. So that was one thing that I really liked about the course. I really appreciated it. In terms of how it was structured, like I said, with the calls and everything, there was also a challenge lab, and there was a CTF as well as a kind of extra thing you could do if you wanted to. I didn't have enough lab time to dive into the CTF personally because I was completely new to all this stuff. So it took me all the time just to get through that 4-hour webinar every week and to go in and replicate all the attacks they did and get all the flags. So there were 50 flags, which were 50 exercises, okay? And then there was a bonus CTF as something separate that you could do. So I just want to make those two distinctions there. I did all of the challenges, got all the flags, all 50 flags. And I really liked it because all of the challenges were things that they already walked us through on the actual call that week. So during that 4-hour call, in addition to explaining and giving us all the conceptual knowledge we needed, he would also demo one of the attacks live on the call, or pretty much all of the attacks live on the call. And then in the actual challenge, CTF environment, whatever you want to say, the exercise lab, we could actually then go in and replicate what he did, and maybe the password would be different or something like that, right? That way we had to actually do it. But yeah, I would go through and I would do all of those, and I found that was really, that was enough to prepare me fully for the exam. That's one thing that I really liked about the course. I felt that all of the material, the webinars and the exercise labs fully prepare you for the exam. And they're even very transparent on the fact that they want everyone to pass, right? They don't want people to fail, right? Now, one thing I didn't like about the course, there was only one complaint that I would have about it, and that is the fact that the lab time is only for those 4 weeks, and there was no way to extend the lab time. Because if I had a little more time, I'd like to play around more and try that bonus CTF and all that stuff and play around with those attacks a little bit more. I feel like I was a little bit rushed in terms of having to get through the challenge exercises. I didn't have enough time to do some extra stuff that I'd like to do. Now, what really makes it not make sense, the fact that you only have 4 weeks for the lab time, is that they give you up to 3 months after your lab time ends to schedule the exam. But it's like, why would I, wait an extra month? Let's say I wanted to play around more with the lab. Why would I do that if I don't even have lab access during that time? So I'd be going a month without being able to practice any of this stuff, unless, of course, I spun up my whole environment on my own. But they have such a professional setup with their lab environment, with so many premium services. It would actually cost me a lot of money to set up and time to set up an intricate lab like that using all these premium Microsoft Azure services that they're using and having their own multi-tenants and all that stuff. It would not be feasible for me to set up the lab environment that they had in any quick amount of time. And even they, just so you guys know, even they didn't set it up themselves. They actually had another third party set up the lab environment for them. That's how intricate the lab environment actually is. And it has all these different hybrid joined Active Directory on-prem domains joined into the cloud in the various configurations and all that. So it's a very complex environment, and that is one of the strengths of the course. It is very realistic. It's very lifelike. They're using premium security features that, you don't get for free, obviously. So yeah, very, very solid lab. But that is one complaint I would have about the lab, is that you only have those 4 weeks. And I didn't want to work ahead, right? If I would have worked ahead, then I could have just read the slides and tried to just do all the exercises just based off of the slides and stuff like that. That way I would have all the exercises done well in advance, and then I could try to do the CTF lab. But I wanted to understand the concepts and watch the webinars before I tackled the challenges. So that'd be the only way that I could have gotten into the bonus CTF stuff. So it's like the bonus is there, but I don't know, unless you're coming in with a bunch of prior knowledge, I don't know how you get to that. But other than that, I had no complaints whatsoever with the certification, and the course is very solid. And just some insider information for you guys, just so you know, I put this thing up on my LinkedIn, the certification. I've had it for, I think, about 3 weeks now, but literally within a few days of putting that up on my LinkedIn that I have the cert, I've already gotten so many recruiters in my inbox saying, "Oh, we noticed you had this cloud experience. We're looking for a pen tester that is comfortable with Azure and blah, blah, blah." And yeah, so there's a lot of opportunities that you're going to get just from having a cloud security certification like this. And it's super solid overall. And in terms of the actual knowledge, so that just speaks to the value of getting your foot in the door with this. It's actually pretty good from my experience so far of just test driving and having it up on my LinkedIn for a few weeks now. I've definitely noticed a lot more recruiters hitting me up. But the purpose for me wasn't to use this to get a new opportunity, because honestly, I love the current job that I'm at, the current role that I'm in. For me, the reason for getting the cert was to actually learn the skill set. And to that, I would also say they did an absolute excellent job. I have some people on my team that have taken some cloud security training and stuff before from SANS and stuff like that, and it's been a mixed bag in terms of what they said. A lot of them said that it was a little bit too theoretical and not enough practically based. So there wasn't enough hands-on stuff with it, shall we say. That was not at all an issue with this course. It's very hands-on, very excellent hands-on training for Azure. Now, maybe that's a potential downside to you for this. Is this one is only focused on Azure AD. They do have another one focused on AWS, and nothing with Google Cloud at the moment from Pentester Academy, but that'll probably change in the future. Just my guess. I don't know any insider info on that or anything, but that is one potential consideration for you, is that it's only covering Azure Active Directory. It's not covering the other cloud providers like AWS and GCP. So some of those SANS, the reason I say that is some of those SANS courses do cover all three. But that could also be a positive, right? Because if you're covering all three in a short amount of time, you're not going to get too deep into any one of them, right? But on the other hand, you can see how they all have these commonalities, how they fit together, and things like that. So it's really up to you in terms of that. I didn't find it to be a problem. I like the fact that we're able to go semi-deep. It is a beginner's boot camp, so we didn't go super deep in any one area. But like I said, I really appreciated how they said, hey, if you want to look further into this, here's some resources, here's some rabbit holes you can go down on your own after the course if that's what you want to do. But the training itself, I learned so much from it, and I definitely do feel that if I were to go into a cloud-based pen test today up against an Azure environment, that I would be pretty well equipped to do that. I would definitely have a lot that I could look for, and I would understand my way around these command line tools and things like that pretty well. And honestly, I feel like it beefed up my PowerShell skills so much just because you use so much PowerShell in this course. I mean, unless you prefer to use the AZ CLI, I suppose, but even still, you'll be using PowerShell for the REST API and stuff like that. So definitely, you know, at the end of the day, definitely a very solid certification. And I'd say your best bet in terms of getting a cloud certification, not only because the price is super cheap. This thing was only $400 versus a lot of the SANS courses, which would be probably 10x that, right? But also because of how hands-on it was and just how much you learn, and getting the value of getting your foot in the door seems pretty solid to me so far. So yeah, if you've taken this, let me know what your thoughts are down in the section below. If this was something you're considering, or even if this was something that, like me, it wasn't even on your radar. One thing that I would like to say as well is that when I first signed up for this, I was just like, oh, cool, Azure training. I would like to learn some Azure Active Directory pen testing. So I signed up not even knowing there was a certification associated with this. So I was like, well, darn, I'm going for OSCP right now. Now I have another certification to deal with. But yeah, that's fine. Let me just go for it. And yeah, so I went ahead and I completed. It did slow me down a little bit on the OSCP side, so I'm getting back into that now. If I had known going in that it was a certification associated with this, I probably wouldn't have bothered with it because I do want to be focused on OSCP. But I no regrets. I think it was definitely a solid one to pick up, and it definitely opened the Pandora's box on the whole cloud security stuff. I could see how there's so many vulnerabilities out there in these cloud technologies because it's so complex, and even the developers and stuff, they do not understand it as well. And so as you can imagine, there's just so many vulnerabilities waiting to be discovered out there, misconfigurations and things like that. So definitely worth your time if this is something you're interested in. I know I've been talking for a while, so I'll just go ahead and end it there and pull up on the screen for you some technical videos you can dive into right now. I'll see you guys right in those videos. Thanks for watching.